So, this is the final movie. Yes, the one that wraps everything up. Everything is a little bit generous. But it is the end. Well, that was also unclear. How did it end? Well, the world went through an apocalypse, and the heroes had to destroy Apokolips, the planet, not the event. But even though they win, the Earth is so destroyed that Constantine looks around and says, "Shite-hole!" and convinces Barry to trigger a new flashpoint, restarting the timeline. So did that kill the existing world? Again, that's unclear, but considering the original Flashpoint movie, I'm guessing yes? So they ended the franchise with the end of the world. That's bleak. But they restarted the timeline. But they ended this one. If the planks of the ship of Theseus are removed and reassembled, is it still the ship of Theseus? Don't quote much better comic book properties at me. Alright. All I want to know is this a good movie or a bad movie? Yes. Okay. If you can't tell me anything else, just tell me. Is this the end? Oh, you have got to be kidding me. Well, DC operates on multiverse principles, so theoretically this world could still exist, but I'm pretty sure they're done making movies in this universe. No, you never know with comics. What was that? Nothing? So, is this an appropriate and poignant ending that encompasses death and rebirth in the immortal nature of comic books, or a massive cop-out that renders everything that came before meaningless? Yes. How long ago was my Flashpoint video? A year, good grief. Why did I start reviewing these movies again? I'd ask the other me, but she's pretty scunnered with me right now. Apokolips War and movies like it are notoriously difficult to review from the classic standpoint most people critique movies because it's pretty unfair to review it as its own entity. Much like comic books themselves, there's a lot of context you have to take into account in order to give the movie a fair shake. And I'm not just talking setup from previous movies in the same universe, I'm talking about acceptance of pre-established tropes that might otherwise be considered bad writing decisions, and an understanding that not everything is going to be explained to you because we are essentially jumping into the middle of a story that's undergoing its umpteenth retelling, and can't be totally severed from the history that led to its creation. So yeah, if you were going into this movie without context, you might look at it and say, "Shite-hole!" But I do have context. I have all the context. So let's see if this movie works for me. Finally working in the actual point of my channel into this series. So we start the movie with Zatanna and John Constantine, who appears to be happy. Uh-oh. Anyone who is even slightly familiar with this character knows that a happy John is a very short-lived John, which means some serious shit is about to go down.
All Justice League members report to the hangar now.
And there it is. So for those of you that are just tuning in, the world conqueror named Darkseid invaded Earth about 13 movies ago and has been popping up every now and then to remind us he's coming back. Now he's here, and the Justice League, Superman in particular, are itching to take him out before he gets the chance to take Earth for himself. But unfortunately, Darkseid is listening in. Once again, for those of you just tuning in, Cyborg was created using something called a mother box, which is connected to Darkseid's technology, and that's how he's been able to stay one step ahead of the League. Even though I've not been a fan of this Superman up until the Death of Superman movie, I'm not against a slightly more flawed portrayal of this character, and this is good. He knows his own power and he knows this guy can take him down. So he's acting out of fear and desperation here. It is a very reasonable flaw for this character to have, as a strong desire to protect one's home can lead to a lack of foresight. Constantine is predictably not impressed.
Regular Churchill he is.
And voices his objections, saying that kicking this hornet's nest is a bad idea. But the argument is made that Darkseid is going to come for them anyway, so the best chance they have at defeating him is a preemptive strike. They leave the Teen Titans to defend Earth. We get one more
huge steaming ball of foreshadowing,
as Raven feels that the presence of her dad is stronger than usual. Meanwhile, the League head to Apokolips to take on Darkseid and his army, which has been hulked up with Superman's DNA, and decide to only take at most 30 people. This predictably doesn't go well. And you can really, really tell that Constantine's lines were written by Americans, but I'll get back to that later. What I want to talk about now is one of the DCAMU's best and arguably most influential achievements. The proof that Constantine can hold a movie. Putting him at the forefront was quite a risky move, as he's not a particularly well-known character outside of die-hard DC fans, and even then, he doesn't fit into any of the hero archetypes that make up the roster in this universe. Yet the faith the writers seem to have in this character, combined with Matt Ryan's talent and sheer ownership of Constantine, played a huge part in boosting his popularity. He was appearing in Justice League Dark comics already, and I can't say with 100% certainty that there's a direct connection between how much those appearances have jumped up in recent years and the DCAMU, but I'm pretty sure the widely positive reception he received here gave DC more confidence in the staying power of this character. Still no Constantine Season 2 though. Seriously guys, this show was my Firefly, and I'm still not over it. So back in the Apokolips, John Constantine is making his way through the A to Z.
The H's are going to be a breeze after the G's.
Of whiskey.
The Glens are full of whiskey. I mean, lots of whiskey.
Never been a big fan of the Glens myself. Although, try Glenmorangie if you're interested. That one is actually quite nice. Though, I suspect the quality of the whiskey isn't something John is particularly concerned about. Clark shows up, and if we didn't know the world was in dire straits before, we sure know it now. 'Cause they're going to John Constantine for help.
He's the guy you don't want to have to call that you have to call. And then you resent having to call after you've done it.
They throw insults and blame at each other until paradooms burst in, and this scene, unlike many fight scenes in the universe, actually serves a narrative purpose as it shows us the state our heroes are in. Raven is in pain trying to contain her father.
Release me, ungrateful spawn of mine.
You know, when I go to the pub with my dad, that's exactly what he says after Last Orders. John is pretty much back to who he usually is between his brief bouts of genuine happiness.
And I'm sober again. Magic can be such a bitch.
Occultism. And Clark has been depowered by liquid kryptonite. And this is one of the things I was talking about. Why does kryptonite injected into the body just depower Superman when proximity to the tiniest nugget of the stuff has been shown to bring him to his knees? But much like Lois Lane, best investigative reporter in the country, being completely unable to tell that her co-worker/boyfriend is Superman, the inconsistency of the power of kryptonite is something comic book fans seem to have tacitly accepted that they're stuck with. Anyway, they move to a suitably more visually interesting location and go down the list of the dead, and deal the surprising revelation that John ran away. Now, John is a pragmatist, and he's definitely one to turn tail and run if things are looking bad, but I wouldn't say he's a coward, and though he may try to deny it, above all else, he's a humanist. Preserving humanity matters to him. It matters to him so much that he's willing to do horrendous things no one else would even imagine doing in order to bring about the greatest level of survival. So, him running here makes no sense, and John himself is suitably confused and distressed by his actions. This is particularly good as it very subtly hints to you that there's something else going on here. Raven and Clark need a locator spell, and the explanation as to why Raven can't just do it is pretty weak, especially since she transports them to the location directly afterwards. Yeah, if nitpicks bother you, you are not going to enjoy this movie. One thing though I can credit the DCAMU with is its comedy. This is a surprisingly funny movie.
Etrigan the Slayer is here. Woe to you. And you. You also.
And that is something that is present in many of the films. It's funny, but not intrusively so. though the famously lazy in places voice acting is still here.
Die, demon!
Good. This woman sounds like she just woke up and doing these lines is preventing her from going back to sleep. Die, demon! Okay, can I have my paycheck now? And don't get me started on Damien. He has improved somewhat since Son of Batman, but the inflections. Oh god, the inflections.
Is there a way to cure her?
Is there a way to cure her?
Did you get any rest?
Did you get any rest? So Damien invites them in.
I like him.
You're among a scant few there, Etrigan. Now, Damien is interesting to me because his character didn't turn out to be as much of a trash fire as I originally remembered. I think a lot of the distaste for this character can be blamed on Son of Batman, though the other movies are certainly not innocent in that regard. Though they do give him some good character development in the sense that he's the only character who actually progresses throughout these movies. And it's not bad. This is exactly where I would expect him to end up in this situation. So all in all, I still don't think they did Damien well, but they did him better than I thought they did. Although, I guess you never can get a second chance at a first impression. And how do I feel about Dick's ending? We are past the point of redundancy when it comes to my disappointment with this character. Dick sucks. This Dick sucks. Dick sucks. Oh my god, Dick, you suck so hard! I've hammered this point so far into the ground that there is really no benefit in bringing it up again. Except, I will say this when it comes to the character. And again, this is a DCAMU problem more than it is an Apokolips War problem.
I was there when Bruce learned about Dick's death. It affected him.
Now, that would be a good line that actually meant something if Bruce hadn't spent every scene he shared with Dick being at best tolerant of him and at worst resentful of his presence. I know it's a bit off topic, but I wanted to go back to this line in Batman Hush.
Dick will take over one day. Isn't that what you've been grooming him for?
If you actually think about how little regard this Bruce seems to have for Dick, the whole
Isn't that what you've been grooming him for?
takes on a decidedly more heartless edge. Is that really all he was to you, Bruce? Someone to guard what really mattered when you were gone? Again, I know it wasn't the writer's intention, but I have a lot of trouble believing what Superman says here. It is frustrating when people want Batman to be this stoic, untouchable badass that he's not allowed to break down or show tenderness to anyone. And they portray him like that, so much so that when he does display a bit of tenderness, it comes across as so disingenuous. That is not what Batman is like. If you take something like the Forever Evil storyline where Batman's distress over Dick Grayson's safety is what allows Lex Luthor to deduce his identity. And I only bring this all up because Bruce's emotional state plays into the story later, but it wouldn't be a DCAMU video without me going on a massively unnecessary tangent that is only vaguely connected to the story in question. A bit like comics now that I think about it. But Damien's silent grief over losing Dick?
He was my brother. I had to take the chance. It just didn't work.
It's good. I think it's good. Anyway, they convince Damien to come on board with the plan and they go get reinforcements. Lois is now in charge of the resistance, and as for Lois as a military leader, I don't hate it, but I am having trouble justifying it. And she's in a sparring match with Harley for the loyalty of the Suicide Squad.
Nothing like having a cold one while a couple of fine Sheilas beat each other bloody, eh, mate? Beer?
You could literally just replace that line with, I'm Australian, 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 I'm Australian. Australian? And as for Lois beating Harley... No. They decide that their only option is to blow up Apokolips, and the Suicide Squad agree to help.
Drink up, esteemed ladies and gents of the Suicide Squad, because tomorrow...
We died in hell!
Now, I know it's an unnecessary thing to complain about, but John's swearing here is distinctly bland and unimaginative. and you can really tell it was written by Americans. No offense, but Americans and swearing is... how do I put this? Cute. Although, to be fair, this is coming from someone who lives in a country where casual use of the C word is completely acceptable in certain company. But it's not really the strength of the swear words and the insults that I was a little bit disappointed in, but the imaginative nature of them. There is a plethora of wonderfully imaginative curse words and phrases to choose from. We don't rely on bloody wanking bollocks all the time. Knob jockey is a particular favourite of mine. That being said, credit where credit's due, I do appreciate John calling Swamp Thing a walking salad.
And you walking salad, you didn't notice, did you?
So, John taunts Swamp Thing into destroying one of the towers that's been sucking the Earth's magma. They storm Lex Luthor's tower, losing Shiva in the process. Oh no. They find out that Luthor is actually Lois's man on the inside, and he gives them kryptonite weapons that, again, have no effect on Superman. And the Justice League are transported to Apokolips, while Luthor, Lois and the squad stay behind to hold off Darkseid's forces. They find Cyborg as the central control system and Barry as the power generator, both of which are harrowing and disturbing scenes. And really nothing particularly graphic is shown here, but still they are quite hard to watch. I really think those scenes were done particularly well. They are confronted by Batman, who's had his mind messed with by Darkseid, and a conversation ensues between him and Damian. Now, the conversation itself is brilliant. It drags up all the issues and difficulties in their relationship and actually acknowledges the horrendous circumstances behind Damian's conception. The only way it falls down is Batman's awful characterization in previous movies. There is no difference between the way he speaks here and the way he spoke in those films. The words may be more cutting, but the demeanour is exactly the same, which does lower the impact significantly, which again isn't this movie's fault, but it really comes down to whether you're seeing this as its own entity or the final chapter in an ongoing story. Though, despite my annoyance with Batman's characterization, I do appreciate that this was a good resolution to a difficult and complicated father-son dynamic. I just wish more than Batman vs. Robin had actually bothered to set it up. Being faced with killing his son breaks Batman's programming. Damian protects his father from Darkseid and gets seriously injured in the process, causing Raven to snap and release Trigon. John tries to make a deal with Trigon, offering his own body as a host, but while John may have the brains, Trigon likes him buff, and goes inside Superman, possessing him and proceeding to battle Darkseid. In the meantime, Batman intercepts a call from Lois and Cyborg puts it up for Clark to hear. This, I thought, was very emotionally effective because in Death and Reign of Superman, we were given plenty of time to get to know Lois and get invested in her and Clark's relationship. Even their interactions in this movie are really cute.
Do your best, honey!
So when Lois dies, I feel it. And I feel what Clark is feeling. So I totally believe that he is able to break away from Trigon. And we have an amazing moment where Superman returns to full glory to battle Darkseid on his own terms, but we still need John.
That's a problem.
Which brings me to one of my favourite scenes in the film, where John gets to talk to Z one last time. Okay, let me talk about Z and John for a minute, and I know, another tangent, but it's the last movie, give me this. Now, whether they are a couple, friends, or not speaking to each other, I feel like John and Z are each other's favourite person. There is just something about their souls that speak to each other. And John, despite what some people might think about him, actually has surprisingly sensible taste in women. So he knows that being with Zatanna makes him a better person. And Zatanna, if you've read some of her comics, can be surprisingly more vicious than you'd expect her to be. She's not quite Spectre levels, but she is willing to do some surprisingly harsh and disturbing things sometimes. So John, being the greyest of morally grey characters you can possibly find, speaks to that side of her. And it's like, no matter what happens between them, they can always go back to each other. I see it as one of those forever loves. It may be a roaring fire, it may be a flickering flame, but it will never go out. And I don't consider myself a romantic in most senses, but I do truly love this relationship. Anyway, Z apologises and confesses that she was the one who made John run away, because they needed a failsafe in case the original assault didn't work. And ladies and gentlemen, now is the time to play Whose Plan Was It Anyway? Was it A, King Aquaman, the lighthouse keeper with no tactical education? Seriously, who gave this guy a nation to rule? Was it B, Wonder Woman, who only developed a functioning brain 1 movie ago? Or was it C? Of course it's Batman. That one was so easy, you don't get any points for getting it right. So John has to go back, him and Raven release Trigon, and keep him and Darkseid busy while they escape back to Earth, besides Cyborg, who has to stay there while the planet explodes, trapping the new god and the old in nothingness forever. I won't talk about Cyborg's ridiculous and undignified last line because I want to stay in a good mood.
Suck it, bitches.
This is my good mood face. And the thing is, when they get back to Earth, although they've won, that is not the end of the struggle because the planet is so incredibly damaged. That is something too many stories gloss over, the challenges after a victory. But since this is the end, we're not going to tackle it. John convinces Barry to trigger another flashpoint, making way for something new. Right, conclusion. And not just conclusion to Apokolips War, but conclusion to this series of extreme highs paired with horrendous lows. Do you have any idea what it's like to be so inexplicably fond of something that consistently disappoints you? All parents in the audience, I know what just crossed your mind, shame on you. But that has been what this entire series has been like. I originally remembered this series just being mediocre all the way through, but watching it with a more analytical eye, I could see real nuggets of brilliance in there. Just sadly, poor planning led to a lot of mistakes being made, a less cohesive ongoing narrative that lessened the impact of the ending. Not that the ending wasn't impactful, it certainly was, but to be honest, how good this film was can be summed up with how you personally reacted to this scene.
Green Lantern's light!
It is an incredibly well-written, well-paced scene that ends with a beloved character beaten and broken but still fighting, still striving for what's good, and ultimately failing. Jon Stewart only appears an insignificant handful of times in the DCAMU. How you personally love this character is going to greatly impact how this scene affected you. Honestly, the whole movie is like that. I loved it because I loved John Constantine, despite the problems. I'm interested in Damian and his relationship with Bruce, and Death and Reign of Superman primed me to be devastated by at least one of the major losses. Pair that with the decent but wildly inconsistent action and a fair bit of well-written humour.
If you're happy and you know it, smash your head. If you're happy and you know it, then you should surely show it. If you're happy and you know it, smash your head.
And you have a combination that has a good chance of making me happy. But I can so easily see why that might not be true for everyone. And that is what I think comic books are perfect for. To be truly great, they have to accept that they are not going to please everybody, and that's okay. Because if you don't like this Batman, there are at least 10 others waiting for you to dive into. So I suppose what all of you want to know is, do I think this is a good ending? Yes, and I have a big debt to WandaVision for giving me that Ship of Theseus analogy, because you can debate for a lifetime what this ending actually means. Is it bleak or hopeful? Is it truly even an end? Is everything that came before meaningless now? Is it a brilliant illustration of the death and rebirth cycle of comic book characters? The truth is, yes to all. So before I leave you all, I want to say, those of you who have stuck with this series, thank you. Your amazing comments have been sustenance during this laborious year-long exercise. But looking back at my videos, I noticed a few overarching themes. So I wanted to pose a little game to you. How many times did I go off on a tangent? How many times did I bitch about Wonder Woman? How many times did I bitch about Aquaman? And finally, the backbone of these videos, the catchphrase of the DCAMU Retrospective series. How many times did I make a dick joke? I guarantee, depending on your point of view, most people are going to come up with different answers. Once again, thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this, please subscribe because I am not done yet. You'll never be done, Ainsley. Comic books are an endless stream of questions, each one with more answers than the last. It's a tree with many branches that keeps growing. It's like magical gold that keeps duplicating, making you richer, all the while consuming you. You're not done. You'll never be done.